Hi, I'm Rashonda. I'm the creator of this YouTube channel, as well as the artbyro.com website, where you can find over 250 art and drawing tutorials. So be sure to check that out, but of course not until after you watch the video, which hopefully you'll feel inspired to do some of your artwork and maybe even draw along. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how I draw a mushroom. This is good for beginners. It's easy. They're fun. I think they're really cute. So let's go ahead and go on over to the art studio and get started on that drawing. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be drawing a mushroom. These are very easy to do. They're a lot of fun. I think they're cute. So it's good for somebody who's just starting out, or if you feel like you're not good at drawing, or as people like to say, I'm not very artistic. And you can learn to improve your drawing and your artistic abilities. So I encourage you to draw along, especially if you feel like you're not very artistic. So let's go ahead and start with some basic shapes. We're going to just kind of rough in how everything's going to be laid out, where it's going to be. So here's the stem. Just draw kind of a rectangular shape. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then an oval. This is going to be the underneath part of the mushroom. And then just kind of a rough cone type shape on top. If it goes off the edge of the paper, that's okay. Don't worry about that too much. If you want, if it looks like it's gonna extend past where you want it to, you can redraw this out. Try to fit it in a little bit better if that bothers you. That's why we rough it out first, so we can just kind of see how everything's going to be. So then the next step is to start refining the drawing. So I'm going to start with the stem, and I'm going to make it a little bit more narrow at the top and wider at the bottom, and I also want it to curve. So I'm using this rectangular shape that I roughed in there. I'm using that as a little bit of a guide, but I'm changing it slightly to fit how I want it to look. And then if you want, you could erase this other stuff if you feel like you need to. I usually leave it until the end. So that's up to you if you want to clean that up ahead of time, or if you want to leave it. So our stem's going to come up here into this middle part of the mushroom. So now we need to draw this other, this underneath side of, because we're kind of looking up underneath it a little bit. So this is going to come out around this way. And again, we're using this shape that we drew earlier is a rough guide for our actual drawing. So we don't have to stick to it exactly, but it just helps give us a little bit of a roadmap to work with. This is going to come up a little bit. So this line, when we're finished, isn't going to be here. And you can try to, you want the stem part to be centered as much as possible, but it doesn't have to be perfect. In nature, things are not going to be perfect. So now we're going to draw the top. So the top's going to go from here to here. And again, I want to add some curves. So even though I didn't draw that curved part in my shape, this cone shape that I started out with, I'm following the cone, but I'm also adding a little bit extra details to it. So I want some curved lines. That's going to help it look a little bit more interesting. Have it curve around this way and then come up to the top. Now, if you want to extend it past the top of your paper, that's fine. Everything doesn't always have to fit. I like drawing my my pictures nice and big and filling up the whole area. We can add some grass down here. So I'm not really going to draw this bottom part of the mushroom. I'll cover it up with grass instead. So now we can add in our final details now that we have the shape of it drawn. And I'm going to do some circles up here, put some spots on the mushroom. And you can do as many or as few that you think looks good. You want to always make your drawing your own drawing. So if you're doing a tutorial from this site, from me or somebody else, you want to always do your own style of your artwork. Use the video as a guide, but ultimately you want it to be your own. So if something doesn't look quite right, if there's something you don't like about it, then change it, make it your own. So that's it for the sketch part of it, for the drawing. And now we're going to add an outline so we can put some color in this. I'm using a black outlining pen. That's typically what I like to use for my drawings. And you're literally just going to trace right over top of your pencil lines with the black pen. You could also try using a different color. So if you know you're going to be making your mushroom green, for example, you might want to use a green or maybe a blue pen instead of black. Again, this is going to be something that would be determined by your own artistic style. I like a heavy black outline on drawings, whether they're mine or somebody else's. That is just something that I find I'm always drawn to. Put a little bit of a hint to the edge of the mushroom down there. Then we're just going to put some little blades of grass. Cover up the bottom a little bit, add a little bit of extra detail to it. Now for your outline, you can do thick lines, you can do thin lines, you can vary the line weight, meaning some are thick, some are thin. You could use a marker instead of a pen. That would give you a different type of an outline. Typically what I'll do is I'll start out by outlining everything the same thickness, and then I like to go around the outside edge and make it a little bit thicker than the rest of it, just to vary it a little bit. But again, this is personal preference. You could use a brush pen if that's something you have available and or have a little bit of experience with. A brush pen does take a little bit of practice to get used to it, but you can get some really nice results of your lines with a brush pen. So we're going to go ahead and outline the spots. And I'm doing mine on an artist trading card. I started working on artist trading cards several years ago, and I love everything about them. There's a link in the description box if you're not familiar with artist trading cards, but they do save a lot of time, so you can get more work done. You can put them in a little binder and keep a portfolio of your work instead of having just random stacks of artwork everywhere. So if you're not familiar with what they are, check that out. And if you've never considered doing your drawings or your practice drawings on artist trading cards, give that a thought and maybe try it out and see what you think. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some markers, and I'm also going to use this block eraser and just go over top of all of this and clean this up, and then I'll be back to add some color. Okay, I got some colors picked out. I'm going to be using markers today, and what I typically do is I have these little scrap pieces of cardstock that are left over from when I cut out my artist trading cards, and I'll just check out what the colors look like on that paper so that I know ahead of time if they're going to blend together, how they're going to look. Now another thing you can do is I want to add a few little lines in here. It's kind of that little bit of a texture that you get on mushrooms on the stems. A few, not too many. I don't want to go crazy with it. So I'm going to go ahead and start by using my lighter color. So what I like to do is pick out a couple of markers for each color. So for the stem part, it's kind of a orangish yellow. So I'll have a light color, that's this orangish yellow, and then I'll have one that's just slightly darker. Now sometimes I'll use 3 markers, sometimes I use 2. It depends on a few things. One is the availability of the colors that I have, because sometimes you can't find the exact perfect color marker. So you have to just use whatever you have available, and it might not be exactly the color that you want to use. And also the size. So because I'm working on an artist trading card, which is a little bit smaller, I find that just having the 2 colors for each is fine. Sometimes I'll use 3. It depends on what I'm doing, what the drawing is. Sometimes it needs more, sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on how much depth and variation of color you want to add. And typically what I'll do is I'll lay down the lightest color first, and then I will take the darker color and just kind of go around the edges or some of the edges, add some shadows, and then I will use the lighter color to blend those 2 areas together and soften it up a little bit. So I'm sure there's a lot of different methods to use for coloring with markers. This is just what I happen to do, at least now anyway. You'll find that through your art journey, things will change. Sometimes you get kind of bored, or you feel like you're in a bit of a rut and you want to try something new, which is great. Experimenting and trying different things is a good thing for sure. So now I'm going to do the under part of the mushroom. So I'm going to do this yellow and pinks. So I'm going to go ahead and take a light pink and fill in this whole underneath side, and then I'll use a darker pink and add some shadows and some darker areas. And you can use different markers. I'm sure you've noticed that I had, so this is a Bic, just a regular Bic marker. These are Prismacolor. These are touch markers. I've tried a lot of different markers over the years, and most of them are still good. The Prismacolor, I think, are the original set of markers that I bought, 10, 12 years ago, maybe even longer, that I bought when I originally started playing around with markers. And I bought them actually to do some graffiti art for a lesson plan I was doing for my students at the time. And I had never really used markers, so I know I've always liked the Prismacolor color pencils. I know Prismacolor is a reputable brand, so I went ahead and bought those. And most of them I still have. They're still good. They have not dried out. So these markers typically will last quite a while. My markers sat for several years not being used, but they're still good. They still have the alcohol in them. They're not dried up yet, but you can mix and match different brands. But I've tried a lot of different ones. I still try different ones from time to time. They have, like, this one is a dual tip, so it's got a bullet point on one end and this bigger chisel tip on the other. And the different brands will have different type tips on them. The nib on them will be different. So you have to find what you like and what works for the style and the size of drawings. So some of the markers on the artist trading cards are too big. It's hard to get in there around the edges and the little small areas. But my original point in all of this is to have all the right colors that you want. You have to have quite a few markers to choose from. So sometimes you might want to use 3 markers, but you only have 2 that are the right colors. So you have to get used to making a certain level of sacrifices in your artwork when you're using markers, unless you have a really big budget and can spend a lot of money on markers. It's going to be kind of hard to get the perfect colors all the time. So for example, this darker purple, I like how it looks, and I like how it goes with this other brighter pinkish purple that I have down there. But I don't like that it has this big giant tip on the end of it. It's hard to get in there and to stay in the areas I want it to be in. But I don't have another marker that is that same color in a different brand. But I do like the color of it. So, and what you can do right here, I kind of went into that yellow area. If you have a colorless blender, you can use it like an eraser and remove that. And then you might have to touch up with whatever color belongs in that area. So right now all I'm doing is I want to smooth out where that darker purple is so it's not as harsh of a line. And you do that by adding in more of that lighter color. And then as you layer the markers up, it's going to change the color of it a little bit. So you might have to go over the rest of your drawing as well. But that's it for that part. So that's all blended. I'm going to add some green down here at the bottom for the grass. And then I think instead of, like, I could do the whole, maybe do some blue for the sky. But a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just put an accent color around the edge, like a little halo around the edge of it. So I'm doing this kind of sloppy down here on purpose, just to put a little bit of just the hint of the grass being down there. I'm not trying to get super detailed with it or anything. And then again, go back in and kind of blend that color in a little bit. So I have this blue that I really like. It's a nice bright kind of a turquoise kind of a blue. And what I'll do a lot of times if I don't want to add a whole entire color background is I will just go right along the edge with this. And you can use any color. Sometimes I use colors other than this blue, but I really like how the blue looks. And you can make this wider, you could make it thin. Again, it's do whatever you think looks good. And then I'll just stop right there with it. So that's the little accent color. And then the last thing I'll typically do with my drawings is to use a white jelly roll pen. And I'll add just a few little highlights to kind of break up this big area of color a little bit. Maybe add some down here. And then that's it. That is our mushroom drawing. I hope you enjoyed this video and hopefully you feel inspired to do some of your own artwork. And I will see you next time. Happy creating! Well, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and hopefully you felt inspired to do some of your own artwork. If you did enjoy the video, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to get notified of future videos. Also, in the description box, there's that link to the freebie for the artist trading cards if you're not familiar with those and you're interested in getting some more information. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!